Going on, everyone? Raiyuden here. So every once in a while I like to do a small opinion piece on Legends, just covering sort of the health of the game, current state of things, maybe bringing to light some of the community's most pressing concerns. And I think, the time between the previous one and this one, perhaps it's time to maybe address some of the things that a lot of you feel are a little bit troubling with the game, things that you'd like to see change, some things that are bothering you. I don't want this to be a super long video because at the end of the day, it's intended to provide feedback, but I want it to be constructive such that, it provides some sort of help. I mean, it's very easy to point at something and say that, hey, that's broken, fix it. It's more valuable if you were to point out what an issue is and some potential solutions. So the most pressing ones that I'll probably be covering for this one are Zenkai units, the Legends limited drop frequency, and perhaps the current drought that we're dealing with in terms of the game. So let's just go right to it. So let's dive into the first topic, Zenkais, and why are they an issue? First thing, they come out way too frequently. Zenkais come out way too frequently. We basically get 2 a month, which I think is a bit of a problem. And 2, they are just way too strong. Zenkais are powerful to the point where they basically render summoning for any new unit useless. There's virtually no reason for any player to throw 7,000 chrono crystals at the chance of 1 copy of a new unit, as opposed to just throwing it in a banner and getting this super strong unit for 7,000 chrono crystals. I think that's a bit of an issue, but this sort of feeds into another problem. This is just my own observation, but I think Zenkais are kind of boring. I feel like part of the appeal in this game is you take this new unit and you try to figure out really cool ways in terms of making them fit your team. You get a new character, new animations to enjoy, new mechanics, new different ways to play. Zenkais don't let you do that. The Zenkais just make old units stronger. There's no new animation to them. There's nothing new that's relatively special about them. They're kind of just the same thing, but stronger, and that's boring, or at least in my opinion, that's just not fun. I see a lot of comments where people are saying that even the current state of PvP, they just don't enjoy it, even if they have all these Zenkai units, because it just gets relatively stale. And I think the feeling that you have to use these Zenkai units in order to be truly competitive is part of the reason why, because it's the same thing. I think people really enjoy the idea of a new character being really cool, being viable, thrown on their team so that it plays differently. How does this new character synergize with, X or Y? How can I, merge to a different play style? That's part of the appeal new units bring. Part of what keeps PvP feeling fresh and the game feeling fresh. But with Zenkai units being so strong and coming out so frequently and just being so good, that's sort of snatched away from players. They feel, what's the point? What's the reason to summon for the new character when all these other guys that, although are boring, just destroy all new units? That's part of the problem. But it's not just that. Zenkais release really frequently, and this sort of feeds into this giant power creep loop that the game has. Zenkai units have to be better than sort of the newest unit, and the newest unit has to be better than the Zenkai unit kind of thing, just because that's how you incentivize players to even bother spending their hard-earned chrono crystals to try and chase them. And that's a big problem. If they come out 2 every week and we get new banners almost as frequently, you're just seeing an exponential growth of just how powerful units have to be absolutely worth it. And that's part of the problem. Rampant power creep isn't really healthy for a game. We can use Vegeta Blue as an example. He came out at a time where he had to represent the 2nd year anniversary. He was that highlight cool guy, but he had to be so strong and so capable just so that he looked more appealing than Zenkai units. And I mean, they certainly knocked it out of the park, but boy oh boy did we realize that this is crazy. Too much power. Vegeta Blue does so much, and what's even crazier is when we said that a unit as good as Vegeta Blue does no longer stands at the pinnacle of what the meta currently is, then there's a bit of an issue. And I mean, if you refer to tier lists for any sort of guidance, you can see that he's not really the king anymore, and that's not really a good sign. Now, topics number 2 and 3, I feel like sort of go hand in hand, so I'll cover them at the same time. Legends limited unit frequency, they seem to be coming more frequently now, and I guess that could be tied in with sort of the drought in the game. If the developers plan on increasing the amount of Legends Limited units that they drop, then I feel like it only makes sense that you have to increase the amount of events or things to do or missions or just something so that players can earn more Chrono Crystals to go along with it. Now, I'm not expecting sort of like a one-to-one where, you know, we had one Legends Limited every 3 months and now we get, you know, 3 every 3 months, so we need 30,000 Chrono Crystals. I don't mean anything like that, but anything that is more than what we're seeing right now. And when I talk about sort of the drought in the game, they don't necessarily have to make brand new, fresh ideas, but just give players something to do. It could even be just refreshing the stages for a 51 stage event when it returns. I don't think any players would have any issue with that. Maybe even the Rising Battle stuff. You don't necessarily have to earn the Z power for anything. They could re-earn, you know, the associated missions to completing it, as well as the you know, the extra CC that comes from completing the stages and stuff like that. Just giving players something to do and some extra Chrono Crystals to pair up with this greater demand with all these super rare units coming out. And I guess the topic of these super rare units coming out, I guess it's another issue with Zenkai Awakening. It's really hard to pull all these Legends Limited units, and even when you are fortunate enough to get one of them, I mean, they don't even stand close to all these Zenkai Awakened units. Zenkai units are just so oppressive and so good that you can't help but question, what reason is there to chase this super rare, super hard to pull unit when there's this other guy that's much easier to use and obviously is just going to be much better. Whether we want to admit it or not, players probably favor a unit that is powerful and viable in the meta than they are flashy. They care about how well it'll help them when it comes to climbing the ranks, and a 2-star Legends Limited unit versus a 7-star Zenkai 7 unit is not even up for a debate. It's a no-brainer. So now that I covered some of the more pressing issues that I've noticed people were saying, I think this is now a good time to sort of share what I think could be potential solutions. Now, real quick, for all of you that are watching, these are just ideas. Some of them may not even be feasible. Some of them may not even be possible or make sense. So don't automatically agree with it and say like, oh my God, you guys have to do this. Why aren't you doing this? Just try to understand that it's meant to be maybe some help. Maybe they could draw ideas from it. Don't go and sharpen pitchforks and light torches if they're not going to do exactly this. But, you know, regards to the first topic with Zenkais, I think what would really help is one of two things. One, you could reduce the frequency at which they drop so that we can at least slow down power creep a little bit. Or two, why don't we just revamp the Zenkai system? I understand that the Legends development team is not as big of a team as you guys would assume, and balance changes were difficult. So why don't we just restructure this whole system as a whole? Why don't we change it so that you don't have to release balance changes for 5 or 10 units at once? Why not just release it for 1 unit at a time and make it the unit that you plan on Zenkai Awakening? Now here's where Zenkai could change. Why don't we change Zenkai from being what introduces balance changes to just being something that changes animations or special moves or something like that? Make it completely cosmetic. So balance changes will be free for that one character, everybody gets him. Let's use Red Gogeta for example. Everyone that has Red Gogeta will get the balance change associated to him. So yay, Red Gogeta is no longer an outdated unit. He's great, everyone uses him. No one will feel like they are left out by not being able to Zenkai him, all that other stuff. But the players that really like Gogeta, why don't they pay 7,000 Chrono Crystals to unlock a refreshed version of his animations? Reanimate his strike card, reanimate, you know, his blast card, something like that. Make it purely cosmetic, and in that way, players won't hate Zenkai because it's just purely cosmetic. It's just a new look to the character. Everyone gets the balance change, everyone gets the more viable unit, but the players that really care about Gogeta can get their hands on the new animations for him so they can, you know, feel like they have breathed new life into the unit. So this squishes out Zenkai's, you know, feeding into power creep. This feeds into Zenkai's, this solves Zenkai's being boring, and I think it solves the idea of, you know, people just not liking Zenkai because they just feel like it's too strong. Now for the Legends Limited units being viable, you know, with their updated frequency and the drought of events, why don't we do something like this? I say every time a new Legends Limited unit comes out, why not release a 51 stage event to go alongside it? At the end of it, you get 1,000 chrono crystals, so not only does this translate to content, it also solves the issue of, players needing more chrono crystals in order to keep up with this release of new units that they have to summon for. So if we take the last 4 Legends Limited units as an example, players would have had 4 51 stage events that they could have done, and they would have earned 4,000 chrono crystals, which I think is relatively healthy. I think, if players aren't interested in the Legends Limited unit, they could save it, but if they really care, then at least they have that one multi-shot. And I think with the way that step-up banners are currently formatted, I believe that's 2 multi-summons they could have done, stage 1, stage 2, and maybe 1 or 2 GSP tickets, which I think is like a healthy shot at trying to pull the unit, should you have really cared. But not only that, I also brought up how Legends Limited units at 2 stars are just not going to be viable compared to the Zenkai units. So if they don't plan on doing, the change that maybe I recommended for restructuring Zenkai, why not have it so that this 51 stage event releases the platinum equipment for the 2-star Legends Limited unit? In that way, it helps the unit be a little bit more viable. The equip is going to make them stand a little bit better against Zenkai units, so it won't seem like a wasted effort, because Legends Limited units are hard to pull even at the 0.5% rate. But if you're fortunate enough to get it, you don't want to feel like, oh, I went through all that effort and my character gets two-shotted by all these Zenkai units. At least with the platinum equipment, they could feel like they could stand a little bit better. 51 stage event, 1,000 chrono crystals, platinum equipment. I think that solves, not really solves, but helps address some of the issues I mentioned before. Now, in terms of some other content that they could do, maybe Ultra Space Time Rush refreshes more frequently. I believe I think it's twice a month. What they could do is either increase the chrono crystal drop from the Ultra Space Time Rush from maybe 100 to 200, so that it's now going to give us 1,000 chrono crystals, or they refresh it every week, and that way players have more of those GSP tickets they could throw in, and maybe they get a chance at Super Vegito, or maybe they could add some other Legends Limited units in there so they could feel like they can catch up to that 7-star Zenkai requirement, and it gives them something to do with some extra chrono crystals. And then for raid events, I think raids should be more frequent as well. And in terms of the HP requirement, perhaps just make it an outer reach possible thing. Make it so that it's just not possible for players to actually defeat him, so that players at different time zones don't feel left out. Because I know from the previous raid event, players that maintained a healthy sleep schedule in North America were not able to play the event at all. So why not make it so that he has, 1 quintillion HP? Everyone gets to fight him for a set duration, and you farm your medals, you get whatever, and everyone has something to do. I think that works out pretty well. I don't really think it comes at too much of a cost, nor does it come as too much effort. I do understand that the Legends team is stretched thin. They have not as big a team as we think, so all of these things are pretty difficult. So anytime you see them pursue something in particular, know that it means that a lot of effort is going into it, which is why I'm excited for the new game mode, and why some of my recommendations that I suggested, my hope is that they aren't too strenuous on the team. So I wanted to keep this short. I wanted to address things that I felt were most pressing with some constructive criticism. So I guess just to summarize, Zenkais are too frequent, too strong, have rendered, new units useless because the power gap is too big. Legends Limited units drop too frequently, and there's not much to do. Potential solution to this: make it so that Zenkai is not a stat change or a balance change, but rather an animation worth change. So people are only going to buy their Zenkai units so that they look different. And then have the balance change be free, but just for 1 character, so it's not too much work. 2, Legends Limited units should come with 51 stage events where you could farm the platinum equipment to make them stronger so they can stand against Zenkais, and it gives players something to do with 1,000 chrono crystals. And 3, update the USTR refresh, or update the amount of chrono crystals that come from it, make raids more frequent, stuff like that. I think would help, soften how players are feeling, and maybe just look at things at a little bit more of a positive light. So that's everything from me. I didn't want this to be too long. Let me know in the comment section below if there's some things that I may have missed, or maybe I'm being ridiculous and I don't know what I'm talking about, this is just my own opinion. Feel free to share your own. And to the development team, I understand you guys are working hard. Do understand that it's appreciated, and we know, but maybe this feedback could help you guys get a picture of what players are feeling in the game. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, peace.